It's happening.
Welcome.
Coming in.
Everybody's coming into the room. Welcome, everyone. Welcome tonight. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Ash. I'm a member of the Firestorm Collective, and I am incredibly excited to be hosting tonight's conversation between Adrienne Maree Brown and Susan Raffo to celebrate the next two releases in the AK Press Emergent Strategy Series, Fables and Spells by Adrienne Maree Brown, and Liberated to the Bone by Susan Raffo. Before we get started, if this is your first time joining an event with us, Firestorm Books is a 14-year-old worker-owned cooperative and radical bookstore in so-called Asheville, North Carolina, on the traditional lands of Cherokee people. We are an anarchist collective that specializes in titles related to feminism, queerness, social movements, and radical politics. We're also a community event space. However, due to the ongoing pandemic, we continue to hold our community and author events entirely online. With that said, we do have a list of exciting virtual events coming up. Later this month, on Tuesday, November 29th, we'll host long-term anarchist organizer Cindy Milstein to discuss their latest book, Try Anarchism for Life, The Beauty of Our Circle. It's a really beautiful book that we're excited about that includes a lot of original renditions of the Circle A, and Milstein will be talking with a couple of the artists who submitted those renditions. So if you're interested in signing up for that or any other event happening through Firestorm, you can follow us on social media, and I will also drop a link to our community calendar in the chat. For those of you who are attending in the live audience on Zoom, I just want to make a note that if you're interested in asking a question at any point, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And our speakers will do their best to get to your questions. I know they have lots to discuss tonight, but if at any point you want to ask something, you can drop it there and they'll try to get to those questions. Cool. Well, moving on to tonight's speakers then. Adrienne Maree Brown is the author of numerous books, including Emergent Strategy, Pleasure Activism, We Will Not Cancel Us, Holding Change, and Grievers. Through her writing and art, Brown grows transformative ideas in public as a poet and is the writer in residence at the Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute. Susan Raffo is a writer, cultural worker, and bodyworker. She is part of the Healing Histories Project, which focuses on transforming the medical industrial complex and confronting eugenic legacies. She also works with Relationships Evolving Possibilities, a Black-led community-based crisis response model grounded in the belief that we have the ability to love and protect one another. And Susan is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So Adrienne, Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us tonight and to share your insights and your work with us. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Adrienne.
Thank you so much, Ash, and thanks to the whole collective for having us. It's such a beautiful thing. All the like worker-owned cooperatives and all the collectives, all the like radical community bookstores, that's where it's at. And I'm just so grateful for all the ways people are adapting to make sure that we can still get our work to people in this intimate way. So thank y'all. Susan, my darling.
Adrienne, darling.
I'm so happy to be here with you and to have this book birthday experience extravaganza. And, you know, I want to tell people that my story of Susan Raffo in my life is that first, Susan saved my life. That during the US Social Forum in 2010 in Detroit, where I was overwhelmed and my body was breaking down, and I got delivered basically into Susan's hands. And the kind of healing that you do, the kind of presence that you bring is unparalleled. It's very, very rare to meet people in the world who are as rooted in their gift as you are. And so for years after that, I was just in touch with Susan, mostly online, and you kept posting these gorgeous, thoughtful, vibrant, wide-ranging pieces that each one shifted my cellular structure. Like I was like, oh, now I really understand my body and the world and breath and history and healing. You just kept unveiling myself to me and unveiling us to ourselves. That all the comments would be like, holy shit, wow. And so when I was in a position where I was like, I can invite texts, I can invite things. You were one of the first people that I was like, this, please. I mean, can we have like a whole book of this? And it's all funny because when you first turned in the book, I guess it was long. I didn't know, because I was like, yes, all of this. Let's have all of this. And it was like, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica. Right? It was like, I was just like, I'm loving it. But thank you so much for trusting me and trusting AK, trusting Charles, trusting the team with your writing and your work. And I really love the book that you created here, Liberated to the Book. It's gorgeous. So I wonder if you would do us an honor of reading something to kind of land us into this moment in this evening.
I am going to, but do you mind if I first give my reflection of that first meeting? Because I said, it's like, that's a lovely story you tell. It is an honor to hear it. I absolutely believe you. And for me, being at the Social Forum in Detroit, right? Being part of creating this space that was still early in this chapter of movement lineage around building healing space and healing practice is I remember moving through, and you were holding pretty much everything because you were the one who was the coordinator for the whole piece, and sitting with this question of how do we break that wall between those who are used to holding so much all of the time, and to remember that they too get to receive and to be supported, and not just to support others to do so. And so when you came in, it was this gift, because my prayer just kept being throughout it is, how do we break that? Because often those in the lead are leading others there, but aren't doing it themselves. And then when Emergent Strategy first came out, and then everything since, and we worked with some things between, is the first thing I said when I read it was, I've been looking for an organizer to write a book about body work, but in a way that is about organizing. And in the way that, you know, I think both of our writings goes back and forth between those. That's totally what that did. So mutual love fest, mutual respect, but really I want to underline and really root that respect. You know, it mattered that you said, and yes, I need, hugely.
Yeah, and it mattered. I'm like, I couldn't have gone on, you know, like it was just like, I don't have anything left. And then when I got up off your table, I went and got to sing happy birthday to Grace Lee Boggs. You know, it was like, oh, I really wanted to be there for that. And, but I had to leave so much on your table in order to do that. And I wish it for everyone, that
for everyone.
Every leader was just like, oh yeah, there's a place I can leave it all on the table. And keep going, you know? Yeah.
For everyone. And leaving it on the table is kind of perfect to what it is that I'm going to read. So gee, I wonder if you were thinking about that at all. And hello, all of those whose faces we can't see and whose names we do not know and who are here in this virtual space. It's an honor to be in this moment of community with you. So I'm going to read from Gravity, the first reflex. From the minute sperm and egg meet, a process begins. Each cellular shift is a kind of unfolding and emerging within the fluid of the womb. For these first 9 months, this is all we know. Fluid, in the beginning without clear boundary, and as we get closer to birth, fluid that is contained on all sides by a wall we can't yet cross. We emerge into the space of infinite possibility. That's what it means to grow within water. Every single direction is possible, all at the same time. We can lengthen and widen without coming against a boundary, a border. And yet, because it is fluid, we also get constant reassurance this light pressure against our emerging skin, our felt sense knowing that we are not alone. We are surrounded, contained, supported with the space to stretch, grow, and change. And even right now, sitting on this call, our bodies remember this. Every aspect of how we emerge, from the first cellular doubling to how our bodies learn how to jump into the air to catch a ball, is guided by reflexes. You can think of reflexes as an ancestral gift, something encoded in our DNA. Not every body has the same reflexes, nor does every reflex show up in the same way. Every body is different. There is no such thing as normal. But there is a pattern here that our ancestors have handed forward as the likeliest way that we will both thrive and survive. Likeliest never means only. When we are born, when we exit that first world of fluid into the second world of earth and air, a reflex kicks in to help us adjust. No matter how we get out of the body, down through the birth canal or lifted up out of the abdomen, our tissues go from only knowing fluid to suddenly feeling the relentless pull of gravity. This first reflex, called the tonic lab, helps our bodies move against the heavy, unknown, heavy demandingness of that gravitational pull. Tonic lab, by Western science, is called a primitive reflex, meaning we developed it when we were still lizards and other relatives, moving out of the ocean and onto land. We are ancient. Reflexes are like those teachers that used to pop up on Microsoft Word when you first downloaded a new program. If you're old enough, you might remember that little paperclip avatar with the startled expression that suddenly popped into the lower right hand of your screen, asking if you wanted help formatting a document. Reflexes are like that, only less annoying. They pop up in the body at the appropriate time, giving a nudge to nerve endings that nudge muscles, which means that suddenly, without being taught, and again, remember, this is not all bodies. This is a pattern brought forward. It is not the same pattern that all bodies hold. Without being taught, the baby rolls over, lifts their head, starts doing the back and forth swimming movement that leads to crawling, reaches for the table, pulls themselves up. See if you can feel it in your body while I'm reading it. Takes that first unsteady step that resolves into walking, and then learns to jump away from the gravity that's been holding its body down. Reflexes are made up of thousands of tiny concrete details that over time come together in a body that, in jumping up to grab an apple off the highest branches, finds out how to move against gravity, even as gravity continues to ground. So even while I say this, as it is comfortable to you, go ahead and practice. You might be sitting, you might already be lying down and just listening to our voices in your ears, and just notice the truth of gravity that is below you. If you're someone who swims, can you remember that heavy feeling when you first come out of a pool or lake after you've been swimming for a while? Gravity is that heaviness. Not only that heaviness, it's a relationship where gravity and body meet. It starts with this, letting that heaviness pull you into the earth, feeling the land, the physical truth of the earth below you, and catching and supporting that heaviness at the same time as it pulls you down. I've never studied yoga. I don't know enough about the rich and complex history of its lineage and teachings to explain why any particular pose or asana exists. But the first time I was invited to do Shavasana, or corpse pose, I immediately thought, yes, of course, this is the ground of the first reflex. Of course, a 1,000-year-old tradition would know this. Prone on the ground or sitting leaning against any surface, soft and open, and being with our cells as they fall into and push against gravity. This is the baseline that we then push against as our cells arrange themselves into order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love all of these pieces. How does it feel to read it?
It feels good. It's also, it's really, actually, it was very grounding for me, because certainly coming on this call, not being able to see the faces, but I'm very up. and reading it, it brings me down. So it was lovely to practice. And to just remember it. It is, one of the things that I say in the piece later, that I talk about a lot when I hold spaces is, that learning gravity, this gift that happens the minute we come out of the womb, the minute that we are born, the first reflex that catches on, right? It helps us to live with that pull. And what the piece later starts to say is the way that we learn gravity as support, this support that never, ever, ever leaves us, that is the land itself, that is below us, the sacredness and the physical concrete truth of it, and how we are made. This is where we are made of the land. Like gravity is the relationship between the land that is in all of our living bodies and the land that we call the earth, the soil below us. And gravity is this conversation back and forth, and it's a steadiness. And so the last piece I'll say, love, is that for me, even just reading it right now, is remembering that in the shittiest and hardest of moments, when all else makes no sense, at least at this point in time, and for as long as I hope and dream and assume we will have it, is that baseline of support is there, and our ancestors knew it, which is why when we are born, it's the first support we learn.
That feels really good to remember. I'm a swimmer and with arthritis. So every day I go swim, and every day I have that experience of climbing up out of the pool and just feeling what gravity is doing to my bones and joints and everything. But also feeling the gratitude, just like, wow, like even when I feel like I'm off in space and floating in the fog and can't quite feel the earth under me, it's like I'm still held here. Like I'm the earth never lets me go, and that feels like such a gift.
And the contradiction you just lifted up that's so important is that also that heaviness illuminates what is here. That is pain, that is grief, that is joy, that is presence. It illuminates whatever is here. Thank you for naming that.
So I thought I would read something as well. Read a poem and a little spell here, and then we can talk craft. I kind of want to talk craft and just like learn everything about how you do these pieces. So the poem spell that I'm going to read is called I Can't Stop Being in the Present. It's on page 42 of my new book, Fables and Spells. And I haven't actually read it out loud much, so I'm like, let's see what happens. I can't stop being in the present, noticing how the past tells me what I should care about, and the future tells me what I should fear. And the past tells me what we forgot, and the future tells me what we must dream. But here, I breathe in, noticing the gift I too often take for granted, not knowing how many breaths I have left. I want to spend them loving, being love. I've done so much, so many tasks, but what matters most has been the listening to the thirsting dirt, to the spiraling wind in the wake of murmuration, to the drumbeat of ant feet moving abundance with a million hands, the sacred erotic of pollination, the orgasmic opening of mushrooms, pulling the yes for miles underground, the innocent violence of predators feeding their children, the way the wild wastes nothing, the way the cedar gives me permission to pray. I thought someone else had all the instructions, and I, stumbling and following, praying to become worthy, must admit I have been grieving and grieving all I don't know and don't trust, and grieving so deeply a world that is still breathing, anticipating failure in spite of my visions. But when I listen, the universe is reminding me I cannot be taken from her. I am never untethered from her roots, never beyond the whole. And nothing is lost, it is lived. And we are not here to win, but to experience love. And those who do not know love are missing life in spite of all other accumulation. And when I listen, the universe is teaching me that control is impossible. The season will change, and enough is a feeling that cannot be measured. And the small circle is the deepest. And I cannot teach anyone what I have not practiced. And I cannot, and I cannot change. I was like, damn, I hate this one being true. I cannot change anyone but myself. And I will never feel free in a position of demand. And I am already free. And we all are. And when we realize it, we cannot be contained. And we are never I, even when we are lonely, even when we distinctly suffer, even when we distinctly succeed. We are of lineage, of collective, of era, of farmers' hands and strangers' prayers, of singers with their heads thrown back. We are always dancing with our ghosts and praying for our great-great-grandchildren. We are always the harvest. And the future is being decided. The future is being practiced. The future is being planted in this breath, and this breath, and this breath. So I breathe in, noticing the gift I too often take for granted, not knowing how many breaths I have left. I want to spend them being love.
How did that one feel to read that gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous living piece?
It was really helpful today because I've been very like, I'm in another one of these like sliding out of a snake skin, moving off of a precipice, shedding some things. And whenever that shedding is happening, there's a little like, who am I? What am I doing? And so then remembering this, it's like, just you're being present and you're being love and you're held and you're not alone, like, especially in moments of threshold, it feels like it's me by myself. I've got to figure this out. And it's like, you're still not alone. You're still in a relationship even now. And yeah, so it felt good. It felt good to read it with you,
I love that you said that, because the question I almost asked that came up woven through what I just asked, and I didn't say it out loud, is who are you when you were just reading that?
Yes, that's
That
right.
was the other question I heard. Beautiful.
You always do that. I'm always like, let me answer the thing you're actually asking me. And yeah, I feel like I'm a recovering people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist. So a lot of times my writing is like, I'll touch into the truth for a moment. That's like, you don't have to get it just right. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be love. Just love. Just practice that. And the way my writing works is it's always helpful to me. I say I write what I need, and then I'm able to come back to it and be like, okay, wait, I did know something about being present at this one moment. And sometimes it's even aspirational. It's like, I want to be love. I really do. And if I come up short, because again, there's moments when you feel that in yourself, you're like, that was not the most loving choice I just made, or that was not the most loving way to communicate, or, there's the part of my mind that's like, how was that?
Yeah.
Like, okay, but that's loving myself means I get room to grow and learn and figure it out. And I think it's also, I was so struck by the way you write that you're like, it's always a collective. I'm always gathering and gathering and harvesting, and here's the harvest. And I feel similarly. I'm like, there's so many people who we're all in the field together, just like pulling it up. And yeah, so for me, the poems, I almost always remember like something about who I was with or where I was or things like that too. I wonder if that's true. Like when you go back to look at a piece, are you like, oh yeah, like this is the intersection of events that led to me having this set of thoughts, or this is where I was when I was doing this writing. So maybe actually that is my next question for you is, can you tell me a little bit about how memory plays into your writing?
Well, that question just brought all this softness up and tears behind my eyes. So I'm going to listen to the question for a second before I answer it. I mean, most of the time for me, it comes up like it feels like there'll be something that's happening
Yeah.
here around me, in the lives of people around me. Something happened in a session, something I was holding, and it's the way, like in a bodywork session in craniosacral therapy, it sounds so not romantic, the language of it. It's called a significance detector. It's like you'll be sitting and you'll feel something just shift, and it's not clear. There's not a direction. There's not a detail.
Yeah.
It's almost like the body spirit is saying, whoa, stop, pay attention here. There's something here. Just feel it and wait. And then it's this feeling of, like, the words I was using is feeling and waiting for the end of the piece of string.
Yeah.
And then once you feel the end of the piece of string, then the string unfurls, right? And it just shows itself.
Yeah.
And so that's like pleasure, joy. Oh my God, it's munchy, right? Whether it's in a session or writing. And to me, they often feel like the same thing, is when that piece of string is there, then you're just following, right?
That's right.
And so it's when you say memory, I think that I haven't thought about it in relationship to that word,
Yeah.
but what I feel like, and so I don't even know what I'm about to say, what the feeling is it's being surrounded by memory, not
Yes.
like memory coming up and through. That's that piece of string, right? It's like,
Yes.
what is it right here? Which is why, when I was at one point in the process of doing this book, Adrienne, I had a moment of confusion, because in the 90s I did 2 books,
Yeah.
but they were both anthologies with really clear political goals and directions, right? So it was very easy to get behind them. Here's the strategy, here's why they exist.
Yeah.
And with this, it was confusing for a minute, which is why it took me a while to say yes, because I'm like, what am I offering? I am offering things that are just how I pay attention to life, and as one individual in a world who has the privileges that I have and the struggles that I have, what is it to say yes to that?
Yeah.
And it was a beloved who reminded me that what I believe is that, this is all, it's exactly what you just wrote in that poem that you just read, is it's the listening. It's not, I have, and therefore it is.
Yes.
It is, here's a listening. Is it useful for you?
Yeah.
When we listen together, if it's not great, if it is wonderful, but it helps me to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the memory, that memory, I'm going to spend more time after tonight listening to that word in relationship to this, because the memory feels like it's out here
Yeah.
more than it's in here.
Well, and it's so interesting. So much of your writing has actually helped me understand how memory is in my body, how memory moves in my body. Right? So it's like, I remember sitting and on Facebook back when I'd be on Facebook all the time, and your writing was one of the main, you kept me on Facebook longer than I planned to be. But I remember reading things there that were like, oh, there's a lineage that I can feel from in my bones. And it was in a way gifting me back to myself, because displaced people, a lot of times that's the thing where we're like, I don't know, but the body does know. My body knows. My body remembers things I can't pull into a visual picture. I can't place on a timeline, but it remembers. And sometimes I think that when we're writing, especially the stuff that I'm like, wow, like I'll write, I'm like, dang, like that's wise, that, wow. And I'm like, I don't even think I know that. I don't know that I know that, but I know that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I'm like, I don't mind more and more lately letting myself partner with that beyond energy and letting that come through a bit. And, for a long time, I was like, some people really spend a lot of time on craft, which I deeply respect. Like how is this word related to that word? For me, I spend so much time looking for that feeling, the end of the string, the like presence. I'm like, who's with me writing right now? And ancestor altar, like y'all are popping, like you're welcome here. And so in that way, I feel like memory is such a big force for writing the way that we're writing, where it's like I'm really trying to what is it called? Is it divine? When you're like, I'm really trying to like feel the water under the ground. What is that
Yeah.
called? Yeah.
Um,
Or the davening. I can't remember what
divining,
it's called.
divining for
Divining. It is
water.
divining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, I have that sense sometimes that I'm like, there is something here. And sometimes it takes days of like wandering around my house, watering my plants before I can like find it, but I'm like, there's something here. So this is the next question I want to ask you in terms of how you craft your pieces, because a lot of times it feels like there's something right in front of you that's like, here's an experience that's right here. And then this experience somehow leads you in like a mind map way to all these, like here's a piece of science that backs that, and here's a piece of practice that weaves into that, and here's something that I remember growing up, and here, like, how do you pull together each piece? How do you both know the container, like here's the edges of the piece and here's everything that can happen within it?
Mm, mm. I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to go backwards to what you were just saying
Okay.
about memory and writing, and then go forward.
Okay, great.
Because what I love about your writing, Adrienne, and it's the writing that I'm most drawn to, is that it is very physical.
Yeah.
And it's that physical in that way where energy and flesh are the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's alive, like life is a physical thing.
Yeah.
And so when you were just even talking about the body, it's like, and I think that's why it was so interesting that I went here with memory as this collective sort of source of spirit and ancestors, and as opposed to, and not as opposed to, but and it's what I feel like in the poem that you have in here on grief and letting go. It's this, it's almost, it's that relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's here the way that my body is vibrating, shifting, singing in relationship to something I'm hearing outside,
Yeah.
and therefore shifting and changing. And it is why even in that piece, like our body remembers the before.
Yes.
For whatever it is you want to name it, it is physical. And some of us come from people where we remember the before in our stories and our languages and our practices. So if you're on this call, we honor you, and may we all, be working to ensure that that is supported and held sovereign. But within it, every one of us remembers the before. And it feels like with your work, that physicality of it, like, for whatever reason, Spirit asked me to listen to the before more than what is happening for my descendants, although that matters as well. I think of them often, but I don't hear them as loudly as I hear ancient ones. And I think those are just the different seeds that were brought in, the different like listening, and it's why we need to talk to each other, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so when you even ask about craft, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's to some degree, I feel a deep responsibility as being somebody where most of my lines are Euro-Christian descended lines, that I feel a deep responsibility for the ways in which the lostness, which then turned to control of European Christianity practices, show up and shape everything violently, both directly violently and implicitly through violently. And so there's a responsibility I feel to be in relationship to that cultural line, which in terms of talking in the body shows up as science, and to both look at it as being just one way of knowing, and I am not a scientist. I'm community led, community trained, right? It's And so I feel some responsibility there. And then also some responsibility, and not in a way, but in a how lucky way, to listen for those two things at this. And I think that's what guides every piece, to the two things of both what needs to be remembered, what needs to be repaired, and what needs to be reclaimed. And then where's the space around each of those things? And so some of that I feel, again, in relationship to some of the lines of my people, but some of that is just the more generations that you've lived under racial capitalism, the more generations that you've lived in this overculture, it gets in whatever way. And so what does it mean to find the magic in science without making science be something other than it is? Some of the most humbling, powerful moments of learning and listening is in those moments where I get to listen and learn from where traditional ways of knowing and Western science ways of knowing are talking to each other and
Yeah.
saying, what's different, what's the same, and how do we weave?
Yes.
So you're part of, I think, why your question also feels very humbling to hear is that I aspire to be doing that in such a way
Yeah.
that we are, it's the way that you use the language of spell casting, which is not language I use as often,
Yeah.
but which I feel when I hear you say it,
Yeah.
so that the words themselves are doing something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That they get to have all of their history, including the before,
Yeah.
but also not shirk away from how they're used in the now.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I love that.
Mm.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And, I think that there's the word that's coming to me is through line, right? That it's like, it in my life, I'm very drawn to people who are like, I listen to the past. I hear the ancestors. I hear what's behind this moment. I feel that, right? I feel that like a strong presence, almost like I can always lean back and I feel that. But what I hear is out ahead.
Mhm.
And I feel like I hear like the voices of future aliens, spirits that are like, we are not less important than you or their ancestors, like life, the life that has yet to come is not less important than the life that has been lived already. And it's not more important either. It's like, it's all very important, but I feel there's I'm always trying to balance, because the ancestral voices are like, it's okay. There's time, slow down, be present. And then out ahead of me is this urgency of like, fucking wake up, like fucking pay attention, like tell everyone we want to live, we want to be here, we want room, we want some room. And so I feel like often there's this balancing act that I'm trying to do, where I'm like, let's take a breath. There's room for us to take a breath. There's room to get present and to be here. And being here is worth it. Like being here, like when you're really present, being here is worth it. And let's enjoy being here enough that we want that to continue on. Like life can move towards life. And I think initially when it was like, oh, it's spells are the thing that come to me. I felt lazy, or I felt like I was like, I'm not doing my due diligence here. Like I'm not, I'm like channeling something. It's like, what is that rooted in? And now I've come to understand this, like it's rooted in my whole life. My whole life, the life of my ancestors, the life of everyone I meet. Like there's wisdom, just that's what we're swimming in.
Yes.
Right. It's like all this experience, all this experience, all this experience. And you were saying something earlier, well, in the piece when you're talking about fluid, being like we're in this fluid and we're surrounded by it. And actually, perhaps that's the safest we ever feel. I think about that all the time, right? That I'm like, oh, I go into those float tanks, the sensory deprivation thing. And it's so, I'm like, this is not my womb. This is not the womb. But it's nice. It's relaxing. It's helpful to my system to let it down and let it be. And then it makes me always aware. I'm like, I'm constantly surrounded. There's constantly something in the air. There's constantly something all around me. There's energies, ghosts, ancestors, spirits. I've also been paying attention to like the natural elements that are around me that are beyond human. And I keep having these wild experiences where recently I was sitting somewhere and a bee was buzzing around my crown, like just in a little circle. And then it just landed in my hair and was walking around in my hair for a while. And it felt like such a blessing. Like I was like, oh, if I don't orient towards you as terrifying, you're here to tell me something. You're here, you're interested in me. And you're being very brave because I'm huge compared to you. And yet, you're trusting me enough to come buzz near me and then to land on me and then to spend time with me. And then this little spider did the same, 7-legged spider did the same thing, like was crawling up on me. And I was like, hey, buddy, like, you want to talk, but I just keep noticing, like, if I let my fear fall away, then the messages and the data, that the physicality of my poetry, the physicality of my writing is like everything I know comes from like spirit moving into the physical, into my presence. You know what I mean?
I'm feeling deeply what you're saying, and it's bringing up some questions I have about your craft. But first, I'm going to say, when I hear you, I think that, the work of organizers, of healers, of cultural workers, of everything is like we listen, all of us people who are listening to the two of us talk right now,
Yeah.
is we listen for, here's first that sense of presence that you just named, the
Yes.
sense of possibility. And then what is it that is in the way of feeling that connection that is always here?
That's right.
That is what we are born into, what we remember from before. We've been living beings on this planet for a long ass time, much longer than the systems of violence we're seeking to change. And so I'm hearing you talk about these moments where, because of the work you've done, because of prayers, some of what was in the way, here's some moments of where it's now time for that other layer to peel.
Yeah.
And then there's another relationship that can come in, whether it's with a B relative or, whoever it is. And I want to take that into, and I wrote this to you in an email because it's what I feel when I'm reading. Is, you and I don't know each other in an everyday way. We know each other like this, where we come in and then a bunch of time goes by. So we don't know the granular truth and details of our lives. And so I meet you when you bring something new out. And then sometimes we'll chat with each other and sometimes we won't. But it's that kind of a relationship. And with Fables and Spells, and not just this, Grievers as well, but Fables and Spells in particular, I had this, I don't know how else to say it, is I was like, oh, Adrienne, is this what freedom feels like when you write it out? Because there was something about even how, because I thought, okay, so Emergent Strategies, which is, the all of this living that led to that moment, which then brought in a community around your work, and then everything since then that unfurled. It's like there's a difference from directing stuff, here's what I know, to actually being it. And then in the being it, see what art, what writing, what possibility, what dreaming, what hope, what grief, what struggle feels like. And so I'll say just one more piece is that, as I was going through it, I was like, oh, this is not linear. There is not a guidebook that says, Raffo, here's the way you need to understand this as you go through. Here's the reason for it. Instead, it is, here's what life is like. Oh, it's snowing right now. I'm cold. Oh my God, the sky is so beautiful. Now I feel warm. Oh crap, there's somebody just down the road who actually looks really cold and is hungry. What do I do about this moment? I'm really tired. I want to go inside because I've been working all day. Like, it is, life moves that way. And so as I was reading this, that's what it felt like to me, which, as I wrote you, made me curious about your physicality of writing. Who you've become and how you have shifted, evolved, words that we don't have in English for what I'm trying to say, that then, and allows, is again too English and too Christian based. So take all that resonation out of it, but makes the open space for something else to live. Was that a clear invitation?
Sure, absolutely. I totally understand that. I mean, I think. And, today I was writing, I'm trying to write something else. I'm trying to write a forward for somebody. And what was coming through instead was this line, which was like, I don't even know if I believe what I am. And, and I was like, what is that? And so I just wrote it down. I was like, I don't know where this goes yet. It might be a piece of fiction. It might be something a character is offering me. It also feels like it could be a journal entry. Because this writing, particularly for Fables and Spells and for Grievers and like my fiction poetic self, feels like my most realized self and my most liberated self. But it's still like it still takes me by surprise. Like the discipline of my life, the greatest discipline of my life is being available to the part of me that is constantly changing. And it's very hard. That's the hardest piece, because I don't want to ever let anyone down. I don't want to disappoint people. And there's a way that you're supposed to do things in this world. And I've always been told about the way we're supposed to do stuff, the way we're supposed to write, the way we're supposed to be a leader, the way we're supposed to build things and collaborate, like just how it's supposed to be done. And then the way that things move through me almost never fits into that way that things are supposed to happen. So like my writing, sometimes it requires me to be very rude, or what feels like rude, you know. I'm just like, I have to go in the bathroom right now, and I'll be in there for half an hour because this poem is here right now, and I can't argue with you about it, and no one will argue about you going in the bathroom. Like, people will argue if you're like, I need 10 minutes to write, someone will come interrupt that. If you're like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick.
So clever.
Right? So I have written more than I will ever admit of my work in a bathroom in someone else's home. I have written a ton of work early in the morning. Like physicality, I often write literally like laying in the dark on my phone in like notes. Like I'm just like, I'm actually like dealing with all this stuff right now where I'm having to like protect my hands because I've written so much with this thumb. But I will like lay there, and like eventually I'll get over to a place where I'm like, okay, now let me put this into a computer, or like sit with a journal and write it that way. But so often it's like, this is when I can be uninterrupted. And there's been a hilarious process for me for this past like 2 years, because now I'm giving myself more time to be uninterrupted. Like now it's like I'm writing is my full-time job. And it's like I'm like, I need obstacles so that I can like steal away and like get the writing in. So I'm trying to like,
wow,
right? I'm trying to like be in the relationship of like, you don't have to steal away. You can wake up and you have, you know, I've kind of structured it so that mornings are my writing time. And even still, I will often like wake up way ahead of the time I've allotted myself, and I'll like write in the dark before everyone's awake, you know? So yeah, the physicality is like, it's often in the dark, it's often the quietest time, it's often sneaking away to do it. And I think there's still something about it that kind of feels naughty, and like I'm getting away with something, because I really love writing. Like I love writing. When I am lost in a new poem coming through, or a new piece of writing, or new characters arrive, I'm like, I love it. I can't imagine, like I have a lot of people in my life who are amazing writers but don't love writing. And I'm like, I can't imagine if I didn't love this, how I would ever do it, because it's not easy, but I love it. So I'm like, it's always like a new lover. It's always like, girl, come in the bathroom with me. Like I've got some beautiful words for you, or something to show you. And now it's translating into song. So it's you know, I'm just like, oh, it's just form after form after form. Like there's all these ways to do it. But I will say that I'm always trying to get out of my own way and just like let the thing come through. And I feel the great privilege that I have taken as a writer is to start publishing myself, you know, to be like, you know, to work with AK and be like, I want to do a series. And and then I, you know, like, just to be like, I know that there's a traditional path that you're supposed to take, and I'm just going to take this other one because I really want to just share these stories. You know, I want to share these fables with people and share what I'm thinking and learning. And now I get this, you know, privilege of being like, who else do I want to read? Who else do I need a book from? You know? So now I get to ask you, you know, I feel like you've mentioned this a little bit about when being in a bodywork session and writing these pieces, and that there's this alignment. So what I've experienced from you when you're doing bodywork is it feels like you're in a conversation with all these parts of me that I may or may not actually be aware of, you know? And I think when I do body work for other people, that there's something like that, that's like, what can you, okay, gut, something's happening in that gut. There's a tremble. Oh, some stillness has just taken over the throat. You know, there's so many little signifiers, and you could follow any of them, right? And you could get somewhere. What I find about your writing that I think mirrors what I experienced when you were working with me as a body worker is you follow the choices you make about what line you're going to follow are exquisite and they're really unique. And I wonder about your crafting process. Like when you're writing a piece, is it like, this is flowing out, here it is? Or is there a moment when there's like a fork in the road and I could go towards what is known, or I could go towards data, or I could follow, because it feels like often you're like, I'm going to follow the feeling. I'll add the data if it's useful, but I'm going to follow this feeling. Is that intentional? Like, is there an editing process where you're like going back and being, oh, like, hold on, I went here, but actually I want to go over here. So yeah, the question is a little bit like, how do you choose? How do you prioritize within the piece, like where you're going to go? And then how do you edit? Because especially for work that's coming through this way, I'm like, can I edit the ancestors? Can I edit these spirits? I'm like, can I change this around, y'all? Yeah, how do you do that?
No, it's lovely because I actually think that there's, you're giving me an awful lot more credit for thinking through these things ahead of time than I
That's
actually feel
great.
like.
That's great. You're like, no, I feel it and it's coming. Yeah. That's also
one of when my daughter Luca, who is 20 and I love her madly, when she was reading this, she said, oh my God, I opened it up and it just sounds like you're talking to me.
Yes.
So I don't feel like I'm writing something. I can hear your voice. And I think that that's what this feels like, right?
Yeah.
So it's much more physical, it's much more following the feeling.
Yeah.
And then I'll come in and definitely like what's missing, what doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And you're like a teacher. Like it's very much like you're talking, as you said, like I love, there's so many places in the books where you're like, I mean it, practice. Right now, you take a breath. Like stop fucking around. I'm talking to you. Like as a reader, like I'm like, I can't exit. I'm like, I'm here with, you're telling me what to do and I'm gonna do it.
When you were talking about how you feel the future and how you listen forward, I was most of the time when I feel the future, I very much feel it in some kind of I don't know how else to say it, but like a mother lens. Like I feel a relationship from motherness.
Yeah.
And then the poem that you just wrote when you said, how do we practice being, not how do we, but that this is about being love, right?
Yes.
Living love. And so, I love writing, and the gift of you inviting me to do this book right now is that I'm 59 and I've never put writing really first, not really. It sort of comes in when a piece is so loud that I can't. And so there'll be like 6 pieces over the space of 3 months and then like nothing for a year and a half. And so part of what you're inviting me to do by having this moment come out is I'm listening for how do I want to be with writing moving forward.
Oh,
and that is where, for me, this piece is more, I mean, it's what I say in the introduction to the book. An elder in my life, who I deeply love and am impacted by, she said that as you grow older, you have, as you live, you have experiences that are like stones that you pick up and you put into your pocket.
Yes.
And those stones are part of what reminds you who you are. And as you get older, you keep building more and more stones. And then you reach a point where it's time, you want to start giving them away.
Yes.
And that if you have the privilege of living a full lifespan, then that means that when your pockets are empty, it's time to prepare to move. And so that is, at 59, I can feel, and for those who are on this, who are my age or older, like I have so much to learn from you, but I have that feeling. And so, teacher, I suppose it's that word, but it's like, oh my God, we want
Yeah.
Like, it's that kind of a feeling, but in a very
Yes.
quiet way.
Yeah.
There's a piece that I keep working on but haven't had time to finish that's on like authority and abolition.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
within abolitionist practice, where does authority come from? I'm not
Yeah.
the first one to say that. Many people talk about that. But
Yeah.
there's something I feel in relationship to that. And to learn it, I have to write it out. And a friend once said to me, "Oh,
Yes.
I get why you're how you write, is because when I write it, I almost don't feel what is in there until it goes out.
Yeah.
And then there's this, even if nobody says anything,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, here we are." And so when I first noticed that, I'm like, God, that sounds so narcissistic. It's like, I don't even exist until you tell me who I am. But then over time, I was like, no, that's not what this is.
That.
This really is, it feels, and I feel there's my humility mark is going right now, but it does feel like an offering, a relationship. And so that's
Yeah.
why writing feels so lovely, is that it doesn't feel lonely. If anything, it feels so deeply surrounded and connected. And then I get to have eventually, and I mean, when you put things out, you actually don't hear that much from folks about, at least I don't, from what folks feel or think.
Yeah.
Not in words and things, it more comes, it's something else. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
like a wave that comes back. And, I also think this is part of why I was interested in getting you off of like the, sort of the just posting stuff online and into a book, because I think there's something, and I know I was just like, I just looked at the time and I was like, holy crap. Can't believe it. I'm like, no, we're just starting. But I will say part of it for me was recognizing what happened when I took writing that I had been doing on my blog or online in other spaces and actually took it to the level of like putting it on paper and being in, for me, I'm like, and now I'm in relationship with a tree. Now I'm in relationship with like being in people's homes. Now I'm in relationship with like, I can't just go back online and edit what's on the blog. And so there's a different level of commitment that goes into it on the page, but also there's a different way that people hold it and read it when it's on the page. And, for me, I was like, I want people like what I'm experiencing when I'm reading your writing online. I'm like, I think a lot of people don't, when they see something online, they're like, I'm not going to give that level of attention and I'm not going to go in long term in reading this stuff. And I was like, okay, fine, fuck it. Let's get it on the page, because this is actually really some of the most important writing that's happening right now about the body, about healing, about what is possible for us. The piece you wrote about white men, helping white men to fall apart, is it?
Helping white men settle.
Yeah. So I was like, there's this, I'm like, there's just these pieces where I'm like, everyone needs to read this. Like everyone needs to read this right now. This is how we move forward. Oh, helping white men lose control.
Yeah, thank you. I don't even remember my own title. Thank you.
I never remember anything. People are always like, you remember when you said this? I was like, girl, no, honey, I wrote that 10 years ago. Okay. I've lived a lot, but help that there's just certain pieces where I'm like, every time I read it, I'm like, oh, like it's a longer form and it's a longer commitment of your attention. But I think that if people really give that attention to it, that means that the impact can even be that much more profound, because I'm like, I'm not giving you a sound bite. I'm not giving you a Twitter sentence. I'm giving you a whole thought. And I feel like that with your writing, it's like, I want to take you on a journey and give you a whole thought, which I guess since we're at time, I think the main thing I want to reflect back to you is like, your whole thoughts are so nourishing, so important. And I hope that this is, the beginning of a period of publishing for you, a period of sharing these essays. Because just so everyone knows, like this is literally half or maybe less than half of the size of what could have been published. And I would have happily been like, yeah. So there's a Liberated to the Bone Part 2. There's other work, but I want to say that thank you. I always have the feeling of like, I want more, and also it's enough. And with you, you give me that feeling where I'm like, this is so nourishing and so enough. I'm so grateful to exist. I'm so grateful that you put pen to page and like let your whole thought process be seen. It makes me feel very close to you in the pattern of things. I'm really grateful for your life, your work, your writing.
Adrienne, you are such an incredibly generous listener, lover, paying attention, artist, organizer. I mean, the way that you just named that, it's like, may I be what you see, is what comes up in me,
Yeah.
not in a flinching away,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
in
yeah.
a, like, your words are an invitation to expand.
Yeah.
And
I love the title Pay Attentioner. I'm
pay
adding
attention,
a
right?
pay attentioner.
It's not the
Okay.
busy part. And it's
That works
also,
for
and it's
me.
like, I link arms right now with everybody else who's on this call, is
Yes.
that, you came in as an organizer who was also a writer and artist in it, and somebody who touches and pays attention.
Yeah.
And then you expanded because of
Yeah.
what you're doing. And the way that with you taking the gift that you have and the creativity and the relationships and what lifts and saying, oh, how am I going to continue, like, to expand? Here's my body and here's everyone else. To be loved by you in this process and invited in, not only is your own work, Fables and Spells being so recent, something that we need. It's nice because actually I've written this to you, but I haven't had the opportunity to say this to your face when I'm looking at you
I was
because we
like,
don't
oh,
have it. So this is awesome. Thank you for this.
sorry.
I'm serious. But
Yes.
not only is your own work part of the work that is, I often think about how, being politicized in the 70s and 80s, the like canon of Black feminist writers and feminists of color who wrote in the 70s and 80s who defined how I understand myself in the world.
Yes.
And I'm sitting and watching this flourishing in this moment where exactly that same thing is happening, and where it's just this moment of collective wisdom, and you are significantly in a part of it with your own words, but you're also paying attention and inviting in with what you have. And so the humility of holding both so that we can feel each other more, it's not a small thing, and it's as much a part of the story as is the words themselves that are on your page and the pages you invite in the same way that when I said at the social forum, I kept saying somebody needs to break that membrane, who is seen as a leader, who's holding all of this, needs to come in and say, it's really not just about me and I need help.
Yeah.
I feel like that same thing you did at the social forum is what you're doing
Yes.
right now.
I'm basically
And
always falling apart and being like, somebody heal me. Somebody out here needs to help me fucking heal. Well, and I will say this, it's really beautiful to get this affirmation from you. And, it has been so hard to make a transition to mostly writing. It's hard because for me, organizing feels so tangible. Facilitating a group through a process feels so tangible. And I'm like, yeah, that we just made history. We know we did. And writing a book is such a different endeavor. Writing poems is such a different endeavor. And still, I feel that we just made history when I publish other people much more than when I publish, like when my own books come out. I'm like, this right here, and that's my own work. Like I got my therapy on it, I'm like, we're paying attention to it. But it really helps when people I deeply respect and look up to are like, yeah, also what you're doing matters. That path matters. I think we all need that. So it's really beautiful to be in the echo chamber of that with you here tonight. And I love everyone who showed up tonight to be with us. I hope that it felt nourishing to you. I'm sorry, I totally lost track of time. But all the questions are like, love you, Raffo. Not a question, but thanks. I love you. And then someone asked a question about how we did our layout and what we didn't include. And I think we added some of that in there. I think did we speak about that? How did you decide what not to include?
I would like to say I just threw everything up in the air and saw what landed, but it was some version of that. And it was very funny because when I sent it, Charles wrote a very kind, like, you do know that an average sized book is about X. I'm like, oh, I know. I was just sending it there so you could pick and choose.
He's like, oh, Susan R.R. Martin. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was that's often what I do though too, is I now have gotten in the process of like, let me share and the feedback will help guide me because I can't always tell. But I would say for Fables and Spells, I really had a sense of like, is this a fable? Is this a spell? Like, there's other is this witchy? Is this a story of someone becoming? Is this a poem of someone having an aha or a recognition or a realization? So you know, and then I had published, you know, short stories and other stuff in the world. So that was exciting. Everyone's just sending us love. Everyone's just sending us love in these questions. So we love you all. Ash, thank you so much. You want to come back and say good night to us? How did we do? Was this the best event you ever had?
It's a pure pleasure to host you all. And gosh, an hour just flew by.
It flew by so fast.
I get the feeling that this conversation could have gone on much longer.
I was not kidding when I said I could talk to Susan for like many, many hours. So yeah, thank you for giving us that.
Yeah, Susan spoke to that sort of these moments when y'all meet each other and get to connect. And I just feel really honored to have gotten to witness that. And everybody who's here in the attendance who, yep, the love is continuing to pour.
We're like, this is how we're going to use this Q&A thing. We love y'all so much too.
Absolutely. And I dropped links to the books there. So if folks haven't picked up copies yet, really hope that you will.
Yeah. And I think that you can still order them. Like if you order them together, there's a tote bag situation.
Yes, yes. Order them through AK Press. You'll get a tote.
Oh no, but no, tonight they should just order through you. Sorry.
No,
Rewind.
We're all working together. And yes, if everybody who registered for this event too, you'll get a follow-up email with a recording. So lots of really beautiful moments tonight and wisdom shared, and you'll be able to watch it again in the future. Susan, Adrienne, thank you so much for taking the time. Congrats on the books. And yeah, if there's more, which it sounds like there will be in the future, we'd love to not only have you virtually, but Firestorm also is going to be moving into a new building in 2023.
Yay.
And we'll be returning to in-person events. We got this cool new building, these big
congratulations.
That's cool, because I'd drive over to y'all. So
yeah,
I'm in Durham, so I'm like, I'll pop over there. Yeah,
absolutely. Come visit us. It'll be a great new space, spring 2023.
Okay, great.
Maybe we can do this in person sometime down the line.
Awesome. That would be awesome.
Awesome. Okay, y'all.
All right.
So much. Thank you for your work. It's not small.
Absolutely. Thank y'all. Be well.
Goodbye, everybody. Gentle night. Adrienne. Bye, love.
I know. I'm gonna go take a bath and just think about you.
Right back at you, love. Goodbye, everybody.